This is Comic Geek Speak episode 1893, Gaslight by Zoom.
Adam, how's your show going?
It's coming along okay, Peter. It'll go even better when we actually have a stage to work with.
You mean space or stage?
Space, yes, we have the space. We don't have a stage set up in it yet.
Okay.
Apparently, we're not allowed to build a stage. We are allowed to use a riser. So that's what we're going to be doing. It's going to be the size of 2 postage stamps.
Unreal.
Yeah. So that's going to be a challenge. We're coming along. We're almost off book. We're working on the blocking, but we're probably gonna have to throw out much of the blocking we've done as soon as we know what the space is gonna be like.
Yeah.
Of all the most ridiculous, nitpicky nonsense I've ever heard,
we still don't know who squealed on us, but we don't like him.
No, I would guess not.
I know. And it's not like you're doing, you're not doing hair. You're not doing
Calcutta or whatever. No, it's just the Sound of Music.
Best little whorehouse in Texas.
Somebody really hates Julie Andrews, maybe. I don't know.
Whose mother was mauled by a yodeler or something. I don't know.
Especially because they have ties to Reading. They started, I'm pretty sure they started the Community School of Music that's in inner city, sort of near where I used to live on Windsor Street.
Really?
Yeah. They were, whether they started it, they were in the early years of it. I'd have to look it up, but it's this Community School of Music. I used to take piano lessons there, and there's a picture of the Von Trapp family.
Oh, that's neat.
In one of the rooms. So very interesting little connection to Reading.
Yeah. I had no idea.
I know Colonel Klink conducted here a couple times.
Werner Klemperer, wirklich.
Yeah. Conducted the Reading Symphony Orchestra a few times.
How about that?
I wish I would have known it back in the day and gone to see him, because I loved Hogan's Heroes, but that would have been a neat treat to see.
When did you say that happened?
It had to be the 80s, the mid-80s, maybe early 90s.
I would have wanted to go see that too. Mid-80s is when I would have been watching Hogan's Heroes reruns on Channel 17.
Yeah.
In the early afternoons.
Yep. I did talk to Pants the other day. He was watching Hogan's Heroes reruns.
I was just going to ask if we knew, he's holed up in his home watching all that stuff.
Yeah, he called asking some advice on Picard, season 3. So talked to him for a few minutes about that.
Well, I don't know if you guys watched the Paramount Plus show about the making of The Godfather, but the guy who produced The Godfather was the guy who created Hogan's Heroes.
Really?
And he left Hogan's Heroes to go do The Godfather, and he passed the torch on Hogan's Heroes to another producer because he was like, I know this is crazy, but I really think this movie needs to get made. And he fought tooth and nail. It was hard up until the very end. They didn't even know if it was actually going to get released or made or finished and everything. The whole thing. It was a whole crazy story. That's a good show.
I'll have to watch that.
It's like 6 episodes or maybe 8 episodes or whatever. It's just a one-time miniseries thing. It was really interesting.
I saw the advertisement for it, but I didn't know it was a miniseries. I thought it was just like a 2 or 3 hour thing. Huh. Interesting. Yeah. I had no idea that the showrunner for Hogan's Heroes left to do The Godfather.
He wasn't even a producer before he made Hogan's Heroes. He was just like a guy. He did data entry or something he was something like that. And then he had an idea for a TV show, and he muscled his way into some Hollywood parties and was charismatic. And so he sold his idea, and then that was it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Got Bing Crosby on board with it, I guess.
I don't. They didn't mention Bing Crosby in the show. So that's all I know. But
yeah, he was executive producer or something on Hogan's Heroes. And it's
interesting.
Wow,
it was a wild story. I don't know.
But see, that was movie making back then, right? Like movie making right now is so sanitized, for obvious reasons, right? Unions, rules, regulations, health,
Yeah.
safety. Look at everything that's going on with, the Baldwin movie. But like when you think of, the making of Apocalypse Now is just mind blowing, like what he had to go through to make that movie and all the behind scenes stuff. And Lawrence Fishburne was a kid, and they're really slicing up that oxen in that one scene, like just
the
what?
horse head thing.
Oh.
So like there was a whole thing like the mafia did not want them to make this movie originally because like they thought it was a slight on Italian Americans or whatever. And then there was another part of the mafia that said, oh, we should make the movie, and they were fighting amongst themselves about supporting or hijacking or trying to stop the movie. And they had the special effects guys came up with a horse head, and they all thought it looked like shit. And so one of the mafia guys shows up the next day with an actual horse head, and they just filmed it. And they were like, don't tell the people, like they had a prop that they could show the prop, but the prop was not what was in the finished scene. It was an actual horse head.
Get out.
Like, oh my God.
Jeez.
I mean, this is all assuming that what I saw in that TV show is actually accurate, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Right.
there could be something that feels like if they lied about that, then the whole validity of the show would be like silly. So I feel like they probably didn't fake, pretend. I don't know. But
Wow.
I think that's why those movies, late 60s through the like even up to like 1980, 81, there's just a whole different feel to them, right? Like they feel almost more authentic on some level, even though if depending on what genre they are, they're way over the top as well. And but yet they resonate because there's something about it that is so raw. Yeah. Like I was watching clips of, for some reason, and this wasn't 70s movies, but it sort of trickles in. Like I started watching clips of like Casino, which I've never seen before, but there's some brilliant clips in that. Yeah. There's a ton of movies like that I haven't seen.
Really?
Yeah. And what was the other one? Oh, A Bronx Tale. Like there was some really great scenes I was watching on YouTube with that. And just, they're all basically children of the 70s movies, right? They're all just basically riffing off of, all that rawness that it came out of that era of movie making. And they are so fascinating to watch. The acting in like I remember watching A Star Is Born with Barbara Streisand and Chris Christopherson, right? Like the whether you like the movie or not, from an actor's point of view, it was almost like you were watching two people just having a conversation, and there just happened to be a camera in the room. And then what was the other movie? Network. I watched Network like maybe 2-3 years back and was just blown away by the acting, the dialogue. Everybody talks about like Aaron Sorkin and like his dialogue and his scripts and how smart people are and how fast they talk. Well, like you watch Network, it's like that's everything. He must have been inspired by that. If I don't know what his generation is,
Yeah.
Somebody told me to watch like All the President's Men, which I still haven't seen. I just went through all the Rocky movies just last week. I mean,
tell me you saw those before.
I saw 4 in the movie theater.
Really? None of the others? Wow.
Bits and pieces.
I've only seen the first one myself.
Rocky's not the movie that you think it's going to be.
It's
like
not.
if you, right?
No.
Like, and there's a reason that it won the Academy Award for screenplay, right?
Yeah.
Because it's not really even a boxing movie, right? It's the people movie, right? The relationships and the dynamics and stuff. Right?
It won Best Picture.
Because like, did it win Best? Oh yeah, it did.
Yeah.
But or maybe did it not win Best Screenplay and it won Best Picture? I don't know.
It won Best Director for sure.
Yeah, because like I didn't see that until I was 22 or something, and I was catching up on my like cinema that I had missed because I was a big movie guy working at the theater and everything, and yeah, when I saw that I was like, wait, this like is nothing what I thought it was going to be, right? Like just. Rocky 2, Rocky 3, Rocky 4, those are Rocky movies, right? Like, but Mr. T is like that's a Rocky movie.
Clubber
like,
Lang,
Rocky 1.
He's so good.
Clubber Lang.
It won Best Picture, Best Director, and Best Film Editing.
Oh, so but was it nominated for screenplay? Maybe that's the deal.
No.
Okay.
Yes.
But he didn't win that.
He did
right,
win
okay.
that.
Yeah.
I know I watched all of those on HBO. I never saw any of them in a theater. I just know that's where I watched them.
I still haven't seen Raging Bull and Taxi Driver.
Taxi Driver?
I can say I've watched those once, maybe through HBO, but I have not watched them enough that I remember them, other than to say I've watched them and I know of them.
Right.
Raging Bull
revisit those.
Is very good.
Yeah.
Taxi Driver is famous because of the scene. You looking at me, you talking to me, all that stuff, right? But Raging Bull is like a hell of a movie. Yeah,
I know. There's something about, like I said, that so I'm born in the 70s, but those movies don't resonate with me because I was a kid, right? Like all of us, we had to watch it later,
Yeah.
And but then I was going back and I was thinking, again, it was mostly from an acting point of view. Like I just wanted to see how acting had changed over the years. And certainly movies in the 80s had a completely different feel, not only in terms of the acting, but in the way movies were made, of course, right? This is all, I'm not inventing the wheel here, but then you start trickling through and realizing how many movies in the 70s are like, classics, just classics of the genre of taking movies. And I know it was going on in the 60s too, but taking movies out of the studio and onto the streets and into like, the grit and gritty of humanity and just, I have a huge list. So anybody can share with me whatever you want, because I have a huge list of 70s movies that I got to get them.
Wow.
This is very tangential, but you talk about the way that they were making films and like, hey, it wasn't so polished. And that just made me think of, how we've been lamenting how they're just like, they're canceling shows left and right before they really have a chance to get going. And there's good shows, but they're like, not enough people streamed enough minutes in the first 48 hours of it being released that we're canceling it. Right. Well, I just saw just last week, one of the executives, I don't remember which company, it was one of the big companies, Warner Brothers something, was like, we got to be careful. If we keep canceling stuff, we're not going to have any perennial favorites in 10 years from now.
Oh yeah.
Like where's your Friends and your Cheers and your all that? Like there isn't a new one, right? Because there's canceled shows left and right instead of letting them mature. Seinfeld would never have been it was terrible the first season. Not terrible,
so was
but
Cheers.
it wasn't great. Yeah, like so they need to let them simmer for a while. And so maybe they're finally learning their lesson.
I think Cheers was like last place the first few weeks it was out. And then it took like till the second season for it to really grab some ground.
Yeah. Cheers, though, at least the writing, I think, matured faster than Seinfeld. I'm currently watching Seinfeld and I'm on like season 3, I think. And it wasn't until you got like some scenes and some jokes in season 1 that I was like, oh, there's Seinfeld. Oh, there's the show it's going to be. And especially in season 2. Well, I guess the first season was only a handful of
half a season.
Yeah, it was like 10 or something.
Yeah.
13.
I mean, to that point, Bryan, too, it's like, the Friends is how many seasons long? Seinfeld, Cheers, they're 9, 10, 11 seasons long. Nothing is going that way unless you're a CSI, one of those procedural shows.
Yeah. The closest
CBS.
I think that you have, and like it or not, it's the closest I can remember it happening to, is Big Bang Theory was 10 seasons or 11. I can't think of any others that are close to that.
Right. So how do they sell that? How do they sell a 4-season comedy that they decided to cancel?
Yeah.
Well, I don't even understand. Like Ted Lasso, right? Which season 3 is just starting, and it's a massively popular show. It's so fantastic. If you haven't watched it, it is funny. It is like legitimately
I haven't started that yet.
Funny. And they're saying like this might be the last season. Now, I know that a part of it is because Jason Sudeikis is like, he's living in the UK and he misses his family at home. And so he's like, I don't know if I want to be living in London for the next 7 years so we can build the greatest show ever. But like, it's like, oh man, that sucks because this show is legitimately a fantastic show and should at least go 5 seasons, right? Like it shouldn't be over. in only 3. So I don't know.
But no, you're right, Brian. There's so much stuff that goes a season, 2 seasons, and then they're done, and it's almost heartbreaking.
But maybe they'll figure it out. Of course, they'll probably make mediocre shows and hope that they,
Yeah,
capture everyone's hearts.
yeah.
That's not what we want.
No,
Well, we'll just all have to be like Adam and just make sure we're delayed in our watching, so everything can get canceled. It doesn't matter. I'm not caught up anyway. So.
It just stockpile.
Yeah, I've been meaning to rewatch Mary Tyler Moore. Now's as good a chance as any, right?
Yeah.
That's on my long-term list, actually. I've never really watched Mary Tyler Moore show, but it's a direct ancestor of my favorite sitcom, Taxi. So, and it won a lot of Emmys. I know that.
What's their connection, Taxi and Mary Tyler Moore?
Well, it's just some of the people who had written for that show decided to launch a sitcom that I think the reason was they wanted something that would have more male appeal than Mary Tyler Moore had, and so Taxi was what they came up with.
Oh.
Based the whole thing on an article in the New Yorker or something about the secret lives of New York cabbies.
Get out.
They just decided, hey, there's good opportunity for character here, so they just
Wow.
threw together some broad types, and they grew into Tony and Bobby and Alex and Elaine and so on.
Yeah. So that's what I mean. Like, why? That's all these new shows are doing, and they're just pushing me to watch older stuff, like Pants, stuff I haven't seen. And I was randomly on HBO, on the HBO app, and I just wanted something that I sort of knew but hadn't seen in a while. Like, I didn't want to invest in. And this is true of so many people these days, right? Like, you just want something comforting to watch as opposed to like, I don't want to sit
something
here,
familiar.
Right. I don't want to sit here and be worried that it's not going to be good. So I just happened to watch the pilot episode of ER.
Oh, so good, right?
Right.
That's so good.
Like, how old is that show now? And I used to watch it as a kid. I was there from the beginning, or not even a kid. I guess it was like.
Yeah, it was like 94, I think it came out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Really?
And that went on for a number of seasons. And I remember.
That went on for 15 seasons,
Whoa.
Peter, I think.
15. I don't.
Yeah.
I thought I watched all of it, but I did not make it 15.
Once like the last. It was down to
cast.
Then I stopped watching it, but I watched it for a long time, and that first episode is so good, and I was like, great, now I'm gonna have to put this in my cycle.
I've been rewatching it. I'm on like season 3 now.
Okay.
When I'm crafting and stuff, because you don't need to watch ER, you just need to listen to it because you know their voices, and I don't want to watch large portions of it because as soon as blood starts squirting, I can't look anyway. So I just listen. And it's great. Like I'm because I didn't see. Yeah, it was 15 seasons. I didn't see the first like 2 or 3. I probably started watching around 4 or something. Okay. So I've been purposely going and watching all the stuff I never saw, and then I'll probably just continue, assuming it's on Hulu, as long as it's still on Hulu. Because like I'm not going to go out of my way to watch it, but if it's on something I have, I'll just keep watching because we did watch, Tasha and I watched till the end then.
Okay.
So I'm curious to see.
Brian, it's so comforting to hear someone that can just listen to something and not really watch it because they know the voices but don't need to watch every waking second of it. That's what everything I listen to is on the iPhone, and it's just listening to whatever shows and movies that I'm familiar with because I can just have nice background noise, and that's what I prefer to listen to.
Yeah, I mean, this one is kind of I just get sucked into watching, but like again with ER, it's like really you're just who's dating who and who's whatever, it's fine.
Yeah, I got through. I want to say I got through almost the whole first season again of that, and then I just stopped. Not because it's not good. I absolutely loved it. I will say 2 things. I have never been able to watch any other medical show because I don't think any of them are as good as ER.
So the same way.
And
so the same way.
I don't know that I want to watch all of it because I get older, more things are going to go wrong with me, and I don't want to hear about them. Because after, and not, no kidding here, not after.
Life imitates art, huh?
Yeah, after my dad died, after my mom passed away, after my father-in-law, like I'm depressed enough about stuff like that. I don't need to watch the show and get sucked in. I mean, here's one of the things that I don't think my kids will really ever understand, although they understand my love of this song, but they will never understand why I love this song. And my youngest, he actually hates when I bring this song up or when it plays because of what I say about it. So in ER, one of the episodes, there is a young child with a terminal illness, and they end up dying in the episode. And one of the nurses, who I cannot remember her name or the actress even, goes to his funeral or his memorial service, and she sings Green Day's Another Turning Point, a fork stuck in the road. And from that moment, when I first heard that song on ER, I thought, man, what is this song? This is awesome. Went and found out who sang it, what it's from, and I've loved that song ever since. So in my ultimate wisdom, at some point when the kids were just a little bit younger, not tiny, but younger, I said, somehow Carlene and I were talking about funerals, possibly around my dad's or whatever. And I said, whenever I die, I really want this song played. And I played it, and Carlene's like, yeah, I get it. I know why. But Matt's terrified of that song now. He hates it. He's like, that's the one you want to play at your funeral, Dad? No. So, but he'll never know that I never even heard it from Green Day first. I heard it in ER first and thought, wow, that's such an appropriate little song. And then found out where it was from.
Yeah. That's really good marketing there.
Oh, it's probably such an awesome song.
Probably Warner Brothers owns, like that was the record label that Green Day is on, and that's like cross promotion.
Quality needle drop.
That little bit, that episode made me fall in love with that song.
But that show is very smart. I just wanted to say that it's not like, it is a soap opera, obviously, but it's also very clever. They do interesting things with the camera. They're like, it's not just a cookie cutter episode. Like there's usually a theme, and they do every one out of every 3 or 4 episodes, something interesting is going on, like cinematically, not just like in the script or whatever.
And it always impressed me that it wasn't just about the doctors and like the nurses that they interacted with most. You got to know everybody in that ER, from the clerk to every single person that went through there had at some point some part doing something. It was just such a fully fleshed out cast. It was incredible.
Had that show been on while I was in high school, I would have gone into that profession.
You think?
Yep. I absolutely know, because when I was watching it, there was just something that was so interesting about the profession that it's the reason why, when you say you can't watch hospitals, I can watch St. Elsewhere because that came before it, right? But at the same time, Chicago Hope had come out almost at the same time as ER. I couldn't watch it, even though it had Mandy Patinkin, and I love Mandy Patinkin.
Yeah, it just wasn't the same.
Grey's Anatomy, everybody's like, they love Grey's Anatomy. I can't watch that. It's too soap opera for me, right? It's too much about the, whatever. But my friend from high school he did go into the medical profession, and we used to talk every now and then, and he'd say he would watch ER, and they would bring somebody in, and he would try to guess what they were going to do based on whatever the call was, whatever they're going through. And he said, I would sit there and I'd go, okay, they need a, blah, 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 Chem 7, da, 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 da. There was something about they needed to warm a body up. So they had to throw something like in a microwave to warm it up. And he was like, okay, they're going to do, and he said, I knew it before they were even going to do it. And I was like, oh God, that's so fascinating. And they had real nurses and, people on their acting staff, so.
And then there were neat things, like I liked the one episode because I didn't know the relationship. George Clooney's aunt was Rosemary Clooney, and she was on an episode with I think she had dementia on the episode, and she's wandering around the ER at some points singing, and I'm like, oh, this is awesome. So
to all those streamers out there canceling shows, you're just making me watch other things. It's fine.
Yep.
I'm almost done with Walking Dead. I'm in, like I said, in the early seasons of Seinfeld, early seasons of Friends.
Oh God, I fall asleep to Friends. We have that on every night. It plays until I doze off.
I have a whole list here of shows that I'm just like, I try to watch like a season and then I got to swap out because if I can't just power through. Clone Wars, we've already talked about that. Agent Carter, I'm sort of in my Marvel watch. Cowboy Bebop. You guys ever watch Cowboy Bebop?
Yeah, sure.
I'm 5 episodes in. That's it. Like, just it's taken me this long to watch that show. Like it's like, one of the seminal anime things.
Mm-hmm.
But episode 5 is the what's the title? It's the Angel episode, something Angel, where he meets one of his rivals and they have this battle in a church, and it's beautiful. Like I'm like, I don't want to watch anymore, but how can it be better than this episode? And I have like this one friend who's really in, that I think I met through CGS actually. She was like, keep watching. Trust me, it does get. I was like, it's not like I don't think it's going to get better. I just think this episode is so damn good. I don't want to watch anything else.
What are you watching that on?
Hulu, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
or Netflix or something. I don't know.
It's on one of them.
Yeah.
I have to look that up.
Speaking of
so good,
it is. It's a classic for a reason.
Yeah.
But here's another example of canceling shit before it has a chance to gel. And I know that I'm walking into sacred territory here, so
Uh-oh. Brace yourself.
But Netflix did the Cowboy Bebop live action version, and they released one season, and they canceled it in like 2 weeks. I mean, it was like, so we sat down to watch it as a family, and we watched the first episode, and I thought it was great. Was it exactly like the anime? No, of course not, right? But was it a interesting, funky, visually curious show? 100% it was. It was super neat. And we watched an episode, and I was like, that was good. I can't wait to watch more. And then they announced that they canceled it. And then we were like, why are we going to even finish this season? Yeah. Because we know we're never going to if we get invested in the story, it never finishes. So we just stopped. And it's like, so then it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. It's like, well, of course you're never going to get the viewing hours, because you told us ahead of time that you canceled it. You didn't even give me a chance to watch it before you canceled it. What the hell?
And that's something I don't like about, as much as I do at times appreciate being able to just binge whatever I want when they release it. There's something for me to be said for them to just release it week to week, because at least I don't think they're going to cancel it until that show's over. It gives you time to get the viewership up, even if the first episode's not so great. But I agree with you too, Brian. If I started watching something and I got an episode or two in and they said they canceled it, I'd probably be done. Because why bother? Like you said, you're not going to get any more. I can move on to something else.
We did it with Why the Last Man. It was like we watched, we were about 5-6 episodes into that, and then because we were behind a little, and then they announced that they didn't renew it, and it was like, all right, well, just read the comics again if I want to know what happened. It's stupid,
Watch just all shows that have already either been finished or canceled. Then you don't have to worry about any of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I got sucked into that season of Flash Forward that happened. I think it was on ABC almost at the same time Lost was still happening. And that was, to me, very interesting. And you get to the second to last episode, and they found out they weren't renewed. And you get to the last episode, and it's an absolute huge cliffhanger. And that's it. Never to be revisited again. I'm like, oh, I wasted that season away.
So many good shows. Carnival on HBO was awesome, and that was supposed to be 6 seasons, 3 2-season arcs, but all building together to one big finale. We got 2 seasons, ends at a cliffhanger, and then they're like, no, it's not coming back, and you're like, what the hell? It was so good. It was probably expensive to make because it was so amazing, and it was weird. It was definitely is it mystical? Is it we don't really know what's happening? It was funky, but it was cool. I never got to see more. Clancy Brown was the big bad guy, and he's awesome in anything. That guy.
Yeah.
Read the phone book and you'd watch. Just the disappointment.
I even liked, when he was on, let's see, Sequest was on, which was, Star Trek Under the Sea. And then Earth 2, he was on that. And that only lasted a couple seasons. Tim Curry was on that for a little bit as kind of an antagonist. And I wanted to see more of what was going to happen with that, but that didn't get the viewership either and just faded away after a couple seasons. But I started watching it mostly because Clancy Brown was on it. Like, man, Lex Luthor in life. That's awesome.
Adam, do you have any shows like that just sort of vanished, never to be finished?
Well, the Smurfs, that ended with the Smurfs. The final season on NBC Saturday morning had them lost in time. They never get back to their present to Smurf Village. We'll never know what happened to them.
Wow. And, I did not know that.
Wow, I did
Alf
not
ended
know
on a
that.
cliffhanger too. He had been caught by whatever federal agency goes after alleged aliens. There was eventually a TV movie resolving a couple things for him. None of the Tanners were in it because all the actors hated each other. And apparently, the guy who played the father, Max Wright, who played Willie Tanner, he had the final day of shooting for that show. He just kind of stormed off set and didn't say goodbye to anybody, and that was the end of that. So
Get out. He showed up on an episode of Friends too. He was the owner of the coffee house at one point.
Oh, sure. Yep. He was on Cheers also. He was like a political candidate that Diane was stumping for.
Yep.
If we ever do our retro movie review of The Shadow, we'll see Max Wright in that too.
Yeah. That's right.
See, this is all that I love. I love all that behind the scenes stuff. The stuff you just think about your favorite movies or shows, and they're all like, people hated each other, and shows just ended, money ran out. That's awesome.
I was watching HBO has a documentary on Spielberg, and I've been watching that. It's pretty long, so I've been watching it like 15 minutes here, 15 minutes there. And yeah, like especially some of the early movies, like, and he was like friends with Lucas and Francis Ford Coppola and Scorsese and that, like Brian De Palma, and they would like, and I think Spielberg filmed the scene in for God's sakes, say hello to my little friend, like the famous Scarface. Yeah. That scene with the gun shoot in the stairwell and all that, like he filmed that scene for De Palma, and it's like one of the most famous scenes in cinema history, right? And it's like, oh, that's actually Spielberg, but like I had no idea because they were just friends, and he's like, Steven, I bet you could do a really good job of this scene. He's like, yeah, sure, I'll do it, and it's like, because they're just friends, It's like, what? Again, talk about being raw. Like nowadays, that would be like a whole contract negotiation probably and all kinds of stuff. And he's just like, give me the camera, I'll do it, It's like, oh my God. So cool.
So speaking of Spielberg, and I'm changing topics a little bit, I am not one to give two shits about what happens on the Oscars. But for whatever reason, I turned it on this time, and I got to see the first couple awards, and then I would check in periodically. I absolutely loved watching Key win for Best Supporting Actor. I loved watching him and Harrison Ford on stage for the Best Picture at the end, like watching Brendan Fraser win his award. Like that stuff was, those little bits, those 3 or 4 awards that really seemed to mean something this year were really fun to watch. The little snapshot pictures of Key and Harrison Ford together, they were awesome. I don't know if you guys cared or watched any of that, but I just was totally enraptured with that over the next couple of days, watching little news articles about some of that stuff that happened.
I only cared that Michelle Yeoh won.
That was awesome.
I wanted Everything Everywhere All at Once to win Best Picture. I liked that a lot of the people that did win were first-time nominations as well,
Yeah.
I do think that just like they did with the movies, I think it's ridiculous that there's only 5 or 6 choices per award. It just feels dumb. There are so many good movies made that to only bring it down to 5 or 6 seems, I just think that's just not enough. I actually don't think Jamie Lee Curtis should have won. I think Stephanie Hugh should have won. Everybody was saying like Angela Bassett should have won for
Black Panther,
and I'm like, no. The actress that did not get almost any accolades was almost the main, not if not the main, but just the main driving point of the whole movie. The story point revolves around the daughters, like the relationship between the mom and the daughter. But I was like, did you see what she did in that movie? So that was the only thing I was really like, fine, Jamie Lee Curtis won. I'm not mad at it, but I was just like, how do you not vote for Stephanie Hugh? Like it's like, that doesn't make sense. But otherwise I didn't really watch too much of it. I think it was so, like the awards sort of fell the way most people wanted them to. Like earnestly and honestly, not just popularity wise, but earnestly and honestly, that it felt so casual of an award show, especially considering what happened last year, so it's just like, it kind of just was a show.
And I wasn't paying attention to every award or anything like that, but as those first couple did go through, and I'm like, oh, okay. But looking at the news articles and especially Key and Harrison's pictures and little tidbits that you'd see of them together at this award or that award or at a dinner or what, that was just kind of cool to me. And to see the kid who played Chunk from Goonies be his lawyer and brokered the deal for the picture, and they had a whole bunch of stuff. That stuff was neat to me. But again, I haven't watched the Oscars in years and could really care less for the most part. But some of that stuff was really neat from child actors that were together doing things. I didn't realize, I completely forgot that Key and Brandon Fraser were in Encino Man together with Sean Astin. And I'm like, oh my God, all these crazy connections that I completely forgot about. So some of that stuff is what I was following the next couple days.
Yeah.
That was fun.
I like these rare moments when the Oscars is not all stuffed shirt stuff. Because like Everything Everywhere All at Once 20 years ago wouldn't have been anywhere near the Oscars. Right? They never would have, nominated it even for, sound effects or something, right? Because they're just like, that movie's weird and it has no place in cinema history or whatever, right? But now it's like, no, it's just a hell of a movie, and it's maybe the only original movie in the last how long, right? And so like it deserves attention.
Yeah.
And I like that they can let their hair down, so to speak, and be like, oh, okay, we can acknowledge an actually interesting movie,
Same thing like like Parasite was like didn't that win Best Picture too, I think?
I think it did, yeah.
Yeah. And I remember something similar to that. And I mean, the thing about the certain like Academy Awards are voted by the Academy, right? But that's your peers, right? Like that is their peers on some level. Same thing like with the SAG-AFTRA Awards. Not so much like Golden Globes, which is like the foreign press awards, or the thing I always try to keep watch on, like for instance, the Tony Awards for Broadway. There's been a number of awards given that I just sort of look at and I'm like, okay, that's clearly like a popularity award. But then you go and see how many people actually voted. And I remember one of the years that a certain actor won for a certain show that became a movie that I just can't tolerate it. I'll give you a hint. His hair was really bad in it. Some people will know what that is. I said, okay, how many people actually voted this year? Only like 800 people voted.
Oh, get
That's
out.
Insane. That's such a low, crazy number. Like, of course it's going to become almost like a popularity contest because it's just about the numbers then. But if you had more people voting, and certainly more people voting for more choices, having 10 movies for them to choose from, which I think is what it was for the Academy Award.
Yeah, something like that.
That's going to spread your votes out, right? So for you to win, that's actually, I think, sometimes more of a bigger deal. But I don't know. Who knows? I also can't stand Jimmy Kimmel, so I rarely watch.
Yeah, not my favorite in the world.
No, none of the Jimmys, none of the hosts. I can't stand any of them.
Bryan, I got to tell you, I did something I didn't think I would do, but I couldn't resist it because it was on sale, on clearance, kind of. Hasbro had this Star Wars retro
look at
thing,
that.
and it's as close as you're going to get to the original Kenner kind of figures, but so much cheaper. Not that I need to. I mean, I still have all of these in my original figures. But again, someday I want to put together a whole Death Star playset and stick them on it. I'd rather stick new ones on it, and for fear of not breaking or anything. And these are 6 of the original 12, and the other 6 are supposed to come out sometime this year. And they're like Disney park exclusives, but Hasbro and other sites do end up carrying them at some point. So I'm trying to keep my eye out for those. But I couldn't resist them when it was like 30% off of that set or something like that.
Yeah. No, that's pretty cool.
Their packages, I mean, I don't know if you ever saw them, but they're for the most part kind of true. The backs are terribly different. And they have this stupid sticker on the front, which I don't know. Anybody who's stupid enough to
Retro.
think this would be original is crazy, but I could do away with that sticker. But they're really cool from that perspective, I guess. At least to me, they are. Especially as prices
that's
keep
cool.
soaring on the actual Kenner ones.
Yeah.
It's such a neat throwback. Like, that's when toys were simple and fun.
Adam, what's on your mind? Anything you want to throw out at us?
Not at the present time.
No? Okay.
You're not buying any Smurf figures or anything? Yeah.
Not since 1984, no. Pretty sure I did have it was like a Hardee's promotion back then. Like one of the handful of times my family went to a Hardee's when I was a kid. My dad got some kind of a bad burger there and got food poisoning, and the whole family was pretty much done with the chain from that point on. But not before I had gotten a little plastic bendy Papa Smurf. That's
Well, I'll be in Belgium next week, so if you decide you want any, let me know. I'll see if I can find some.
right.
Nice.
Land of PO and just bande dessinée in general.
Yeah. Every now
There's
and then
actually a cool.
Go
Oh,
ahead.
I'm sorry, but in Brussels, there's this neat like walk that you can do, because there are like whole huge murals on the sides of buildings of comic strip characters and stuff from Belgian comic history, and so you walk all over the city and just to see all of, like, there's like 12 of them or something like that.
Wow.
And so we're gonna do that because, like, it's free. You just walk around. We just like to walk
Sure.
around and look at cool buildings anyway, and then you have a reason to go up here and turn left or whatever. And
Oh, that's cool.
That'll be cool.
Yeah. I look forward to seeing some pictures, hopefully. That'll be neat.
Yeah.
Who has anybody seen Picard? I know Shane has.
I haven't watched it. I didn't
Oh,
get caught up. I'm sorry.
Oh, come on.
so good.
It's so good. You should let Shane and I talk for like 2 minutes about it. Take your ears out. Take your ears out. There you go. Adam, do you care?
Not in the least.
Not the least.
Not much of a Trek fan, Peter. I never have been.
Oh, okay. All right.
Okay.
That's good. All right, we're good. Shane, let's just go through our phone conversation from that.
Yeah. Because
Okay.
I text Peter every now and then. You'll text me. Let me know when you watched it. This time I'm like, oh my God, let me know when you watched it.
I haven't seen it. Yeah, you saw it before I did. But yeah, 5 episodes. So this is halfway.
Yep.
And I'll just hit the high points of our conversation.
Okay.
I'm loving a season where I'm completely surprised, right?
Yep.
Like every theory that I think is not
Is
true.
wrong.
Is wrong. Every theory that people out online are trying to say, wrong.
Yep.
It may not be moving as fast as and I don't mean that in terms of story. I mean that more in terms of it's 5 episodes and we still haven't had Geordi and we still haven't had lore and we still, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I want the gang to get back together, even though we got some of that. Some of them. But in terms of just sheer, let me just sit there and revel and just like sort of be happy with things that are happening.
Yeah.
It's so good. It's just so good.
And you can watch it and enjoy it if you don't know Star Trek history and lore.
Yes.
But if you know all the ins and outs and all the little Easter eggs, it's so much more enjoyment and so much little things to think about. Oh, well, they mentioned that. Maybe that's going to be something.
Right.
And then if it doesn't turn out to be anything, it was still a cool mention. But if it does turn out to be something, well, then you're thinking, oh, wow, how long have they planned this or think of this or who? Yeah, there's so many things that they could be doing.
Yeah.
It's just incredible.
You also don't need to watch season 1 and 2.
No, not really. There's a couple
in.
little things. And I was trying to advise Pants a little bit about that too. There are a couple things that you might wonder, well, why is this person so important?
Yeah.
Well, that's because they're in season 1 and 2, but
Sure.
you don't need it.
Right.
You can easily catch up or just read a little synopsis and you're fine.
Yeah.
In fact, to a certain extent, I think they're trying to forget a lot of season 1 and 2
So
and kind of pick and choose what they want to remember to a certain extent.
What's your takeaway for the first 5?
Like you said, a little bit of surprise, things that I thought were going to happen or things you saw in a trailer that I thought would mean something really don't. And sometimes I'm glad. And sometimes I'm like, oh, they could have done this a little bit different, but then they surprise me in another way.
Right.
Some of that is like with the special guest that they had on this week. Totally.
Oh my God.
Never would have called that in a million years.
So good.
It was really, really good. And at first, the first like 30 seconds, I'm like, I don't know if I like that. But as you go through the scenes with this person, it's awesome.
Right.
And then it makes sense. And then you get to the resolution of the episode, and it's just incredible.
Yeah. I was really stoked by that. Yeah.
I know I mentioned to you about this, and I implore anybody who is watching it and not doing this to read everything you possibly can during the credits. All the background boards, all the displays. There's so many little hints in there that you may not realize are happening until after they happen.
Yeah.
And then it's like, oh, well, they put that right in front of you, and you just never thought it was meant anything. Yeah. And very cool.
They gave you these teases in the trailers, you know, like Lore is going to show up, Moriarty's going to show up. Yeah. Like, and I feel like those were the one, they did that on purpose to distract you that there's going to be more, right? Like the guest star that we talked about for episode 5. And I'm hoping there's going to be,
I hope so,
1 or 2 more. Yeah. You know, in some way that don't involve time travel or anything like that, you know?
Yeah.
We're done with that. So, yeah, I'm really, really, really happy with what they're doing. And I think I said to you too, even if it doesn't turn out to be the way I wanted it to be, or my theories, or if, say, the next 5, maybe there aren't any more surprises, but it's just about telling the story. I'm so okay with that, because the first 5 are better than anything season 1 and 2 have done. And I've seen people online say like, oh, you know, well, why does the Titan look like the old Enterprise and not like what it used to look like? You know, that's just nostalgia and blah, 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 blah. And one of the designers was like, you do remember that planet or Utopia Yards got destroyed.
Utopia Planitia.
Yeah, right. Got destroyed in like the first season, right? Like that was the whole point. Like, no, I just feel like Star Trek has been on so long, and this is probably the same argument for like Star Wars, that yes, I know that there are certain things, that foundational things that these shows were built on, but it's decades later.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they do just need to create entertainment, you know, and just
like real life, you have people that are of a certain age when something happens, and then they nostalgically bring it back when they get old enough to be the builders of something.
Right.
So it sort of makes sense to me that if you have something like an old-fashioned Constitution class Enterprise, that somebody might put a more modern spin on it and make a Neo class Constitution that could be associated with new designs. Right. Even though the Titan doesn't look like what it did when Riker was captain of it, it's still kind of cool to be on something other than the Enterprise.
Right.
Or Voyager. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah.
But it's just neat to see something else be talked about. And even to the point where I know Captain Shaw in particular, it really shows you that really the Enterprise just runs into a lot of shit that nobody else seems to ever run into.
Right.
And maybe that's the hook for all of history with Star Trek.
Sure.
That it's always the Enterprise that gets these crazy adventures for whatever reasons.
And everybody else just goes about. They're the ones that are going off to uncharted territories. You know?
And everybody else just goes about normal life that you and I would be living.
Right.
But we can always look at that and kind of hear the stories. It's just, I don't know.
You know what? That is perfectly summed up in how they escaped the nebula. The Enterprise, quote unquote, the Titan, has to ride the wave into the unknown, and everything else behind them, or maybe slightly in front of them, gets the wash of it, right?
Yeah.
Like gets an asteroid thrown in their face, because the Enterprise has to be the one that's like got to chart it all, and everybody else has got to clean up their mess. So, know, I get it. It works. It's a nice metaphor.
And there's so many neat little things, and some of it you could say is fan service, and I'm sure it is, because there's so many things that they're pulling in, like riding a wave. They've done that before in an episode when they discovered that warp drives was actually punching holes in reality and really causing damage to space-time. Yeah. So they cut down warp. You couldn't do more than warp this without approval because you're damaging. So like, there's just things that they're throwing in there that are all through Star Trek history.
Yeah.
And not only for the history of Star Trek, but for the history of the shows and movies, there's aspects of it where you get a little bit of a Next Generation vibe, but you also get a Star Trek 2 vibe and a little scene of the Kobayashi Maru and a little scene of Star Trek 3 and a little bit of this and a little. It's just all this stuff that's, yeah, it's probably fan service and it's there because somebody enjoyed that stuff growing up so much that they figured out a way to make it work for this. And that's okay for me right now because it is so much fun to watch.
We've had 2 seasons of not having fan service to some degree. And it's
yeah.
like,
and I enjoyed the first season very much. I mean, again, not great. I like this season more, but I did enjoy that first season. Second season was really hard to get through.
Yeah.
But I still watched it. But this one is just so much fun to watch. And like you said, so surprising. So many things come at you that I never would have expected or called. And they just keep throwing me for a curveball when I think I might have it figured out.
Right.
Just because of my viewing history of Star Trek. And nope, I'm wrong.
Yeah. All right, Brian, you can come back. Brian.
Wave your arms.
Wave your arms. Hello. Paging Dr. Deemer.
Is there...
They send him a ping.
Ping. Ping.
All right, we're
Hello.
done.
I'm back.
We're
Okay.
Star Trekked out.
All right.
All right, Peter, I got a question for you.
Uh-oh.
Are you any kind of excited for the new Titans book coming?
First of all, do you notice how the little design element matches Nightwing's design element on his chest underneath the Titans thing? That's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I okay, so these are my babies. The Nightwing book is fantastic, right?
I agree.
Adam, have you read it?
Only bits and pieces, but it's gotten that reputation. You know, Bruno Redondo in particular, with his art, his cover images, his skill as in page composition. Yeah. Of course, this is not going to be drawn by Redondo, but it is written by Tom Taylor.
Right. Right. Do you guys remember when a little tangent first when Sal was on the show? He one time said something like, there's a reason why Marvel and DC are getting artists from, say, like Spain and Brazil and all that. And he was saying because they were cheaper, they could pay them cheap. They can start them off cheaply.
Yeah.
Even
if they're practiced since the 70s.
Yeah, exactly. And, you mentioned Bruno Redondo, and I was reading some other DC stuff, and I was like, where's this artist from? Oh, they're from Spain. Where's this artist from? Oh, they're from Argentina. Where's this artist from? Oh, they're from Brazil. Like, so many, it's almost like DC's artist stable is just fully on a passport, there's so many, without making it sound like Spanish, but some of them are from Spain, but some are from Latin America, Central America, it's really kind of insane. And it's like, all right, that's great. But I hope you're paying them too. Anyway. Okay. So the Nightwing book, fantastic. Just really great. I could tell the Titans were coming. There was just enough hints here and there. And then they started showing alternate covers, and sure enough. And when I say Titans, I mean the new teen. These are a reflection of the new Teen Titans from the 80s. Talk about nostalgia. The original 7 from the Wolfman Perez run. And I think Tom Taylor is a great choice for it because of what he's done with Nightwing. And they're in a story with Nightwing after issue 100 to set the tone.
Yep.
The Titans book has floundered ever since the New 52. There hasn't really been like an amazing run for the longest time. So yes, I'm excited. Long story short, I'm a little. I wish it was a different artist. I like Nicola Scott, and certainly what she did on that Wonder Woman Historia, Amazon's Historia thing was really great. But she's done the book before, and when I think of like Bruno Redondo and Dan Mora and some of these other artists, I want somebody, and she could totally prove me wrong, that I feel has a different energy, I don't want, it's going to sound weird to say, a Perez type energy. Not that she is a Perez clone, but she has more of a grounded approach to her style. So I did read an article where she was like, I haven't done superhero books in a long time. I really want to make sure that I step up to the plate. So maybe that'll happen.
Yeah.
So I'm cautiously optimistic. I think it'll be good. I don't think it'll be great. But we'll see. We'll see.
Okay. Good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was just curious. They make it a very good point on the cover here. The Justice League is no more, which I'm painfully aware of. But yeah, I'll give it a chance.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I know. Still,
I'll tell you this though, they're making me spend money. Like that's of course I'm buying physical copies of this, and there's tons of variant covers that are just amazing. It's just like between that and Nightwing, like I don't even know why. I don't I could download the picture online and
that's what I do. I might get like this, like you. I'll probably get this in hard copies for at least a little while, maybe the first 6 issues or something. But any of the variant covers that are cool, that download.
Yeah,
I don't go in for that much anymore.
Yeah, they're expensive.
Yeah,
the whole like amazing cover thing. Like I think we talked about covers a little bit, like last episode or the one before, or whatever. But like I think about that, and it's like I used to know so many covers. Like you would see and you're like, oh, that's that cover, that cover, that cover. There's so many of these famous classic covers, right? And now, like all these variants, it's like there are great covers that are out there. But do we see them? When we were 14, we sat and we looked through our books over and over and over again.
Yeah.
And then we got to be 25 and we were buying too many comics. We had a backlog, a to-read pile. Do you ever go through and just rifle through your box and go, oh, look at that cover, look at that cover, look at that cover? Realistically, we don't hardly do that. Like once in a while, you're looking for something else so you have to go through a bunch of covers. But it's not like we used to spend all Saturday during the day laying on the floor of your room, looking through all the 50 comics that you had over and over and over again. And so it's like, why, like, if you're not buying a cover because you want to sell it later, because you assume that the variant's going to be worth more, why do comics even have covers anymore? Who's buying? Like, I don't know. You know what I mean? It's like, I mean, obviously that's ridiculous. And I'm not suggesting that, but it's just an interesting, like, as you're older, you're a different person than when you're 13 and your behavior is different. And so the things that meaningful to you, I don't know.
But even to that point, Brian, most of the variant covers that come along with a lot of these books have absolutely nothing to do with the books. Like other variant covers were a different take on some part of the story in the book. These are just nothing to do with them. They're just neat art.
Yeah,
and
Marvel
okay, well, that's fine. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah. In previews lately, Marvel has been hawking these comics variant covers for Amazing Spider-Man that are like Disney versions of what ifs. And so it's like, what if, Goofy became the Hulk or whatever, and this is a variant cover on an issue of Amazing Spider-Man. Neither Disney nor the Hulk has anything to do with Amazing Spider-Man, so why?
Makes no sense.
Yeah. It's like Brian said, people chase those covers and they flip them on CGC or whatever.
Yeah.
They, a lot of people they want they want to own those copies. And yeah, I mean, they're certainly, like, even in the 2000s, I could probably pick 10 comics that have amazing covers that were also amazing in the interior as well. Like, that means something,
Yeah.
Like, right. Ever since then, probably not as much. I'm totally getting these out of pure nostalgia and just pure, Gollum personality of, I just got to have everything that has to do with Titans or Nightwing.
And don't get me wrong, I fully understand this because I'm just talking about buying repos of Star Wars figures. I get it. Everybody has their thing, and if your thing's variant covers, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. Yeah. I liked when they had something to do with the story that was inside. But hey, I get it. If your thing is cool art on covers, that's what it is. I got a whole pile of G.I. Joe figures here that mean nothing to most people. Look, I get it.
Like, maybe I shouldn't speak for Shane or like Pants, but there are people out there that are way harder in their geekdom than we ever will be, in terms of like I just saw a video of somebody on Twitter going through their basement, and they had sort of shelves like you do back there, Shane, but it was all over the basement of all these short boxes and covers on the outside, or maybe comics on the outside of each box, so they knew what was in each box. And then on top of the box were various figures or tons of retail promo posters. And I was like, oh my God, that is way more geekdom than I ever had. Maybe I would have that much if I hadn't sold so many comics on eBay, but there are collectors out there that have, just triple and quadruple the amount of comics that I've ever owned. And, and they love it, and they'll continue to do it. Like somebody on Twitter buys a run of, I don't know, Iron Fist, and when they flip through them, they have like, oh, here's 5 copies of number 5, and here's 6 copies of this one. I was like, or look, I just bought this copy even though I have 3 other ones. And I was like, why? But why do you need 3? But then why am I buying variant covers? Right? Like,
right.
You can't, there's no figuring out the madness of a collection.
Yeah. Well, when I was going to conventions or something, if I'd come across a Justice League #1 in a 50 cent or a dollar, but I'd pick it up.
See, there you go.
I'd pick it up and give it to somebody or donate it. I don't know, but like 50 cents. How can you pass that up? A quarter. Give it away on Halloween.
Save it for somebody else.
Right. Yeah. But now you talk about space. Like, so behind my shoulder here, you see the short boxes. That's a dedicated space. And I'm a little spilled out onto the floor, which is a disaster. But that's it. Like, the reason I'm spilled out on the floor is because I have to get rid of stuff in the boxes to put that in there. Like, that is it. There's no more room at the inn for anything beyond comics in those boxes.
That's all your collection right there?
Yeah. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4 times.
Okay.
16 times 3.
Okay. Short
whatever
boxes.
That's short boxes, and that's all my space total for comics. I don't ever want to fill it, so I really keep trying not to. And I, again, with the apps, I've cut down on my buying significantly compared to what
Shane,
even 10 years was.
You know what you should do? And
Get
this
rid of
is
all
not
of it.
well, until you arrive at that conclusion one day when you're just like, fuck this is just ridiculous. But you should talk to my brother. Have you seen when he does these amazing like cluster of comic cubes, say 4, like 2x2, where they laser engrave?
Yes.
So you can have like the Bwahaha Justice League cover over 4 drawers that just had all your Justice League stuff in, right? And then it's just like, then when you do get rid of everything, you just save that one furniture with those, 400 comics in it or whatever.
So I have the short box that he made with Jamie's that Katie Cook drew in front of it. And I have always wanted to get a second one for underneath it with Starman's logo on it and put something in there. Because right now Jamie's holds all the Starman stuff. But with all of those, the majority of everything back there is either a DC crossover and all its tie-ins like Crisis and Infinite Crisis and all that, or it's Justice League related. And for the most part, that encompasses like All-Star Squadron, Infinity Inc., Justice League, Justice Society. That's all that is all Justice League, Justice Society related stuff, and all their Titans tie-ins or whatever crossovers they had. That's what I'm trying to get down to, is just the Justice League related stuff. And for me, that does include all the titles I mentioned. That's all that will ever be. I've gotten rid of almost every Batman book I've ever had. Any run of anything of significance is all but gone, except for Justice League.
So speaking of Katie Cook, I have some CGS history, but before that, did you see the new? I guess it's new. There's a new convention coming to Oaks called
No, not a new one.
Contropolis.
No, I never saw that.
Not a great name. So May 5th through the 7th at the Greater Philadelphia Expo Center. But it looks like it's more of like a personality driven, because it's like TV and film, voice and anime, social media cosplayers. Like Carrie Elwes is going to be there. Brian O'Halloran is going to be there. Gray DeLise. I'm just trying to see if any of these names. Jeff Anderson from Clerks. A lot of voice actors. It doesn't. The the guest list isn't majorly populated just yet because I guess it's still far enough away out. But I showed it to Pants and he was like, "Oh, if it was a little bit further away, he probably would have got a table." But
I'll have to look at that. I never saw an advertisement or anything for that.
yeah, I saw it on Instagram. Popped up. Contropolis. It's a
Contropolis.
Yeah, it's an interesting name.
Yeah.
So I got some CGS history for March.
Okay.
These are always fun.
Oh boy.
Here we go.
March is a big month.
So we talked about our 18th anniversary. I think we mentioned it last time around. I can't remember if we did.
I think so.
Yeah. How many episodes did we put out in March?
That first March?
Yep.
Well, we recorded 2 the first day.
That's true.
So
I want to say 6 or 8.
6 is right. Yeah. We put out 6.
We're nuts. We've been nuts from day one. What is this thing? We're a brand new podcast. We don't know if anybody in the world cares that we do it 6 times.
In less than a month, because you didn't start on the 1st of March.
Yeah.
Right, yeah. March 2nd, 2006, we released our very first New York Comic-Con wrap-up, which means in February, that's where we met people like Bryan. You talked about getting a hug from Maxim Glory. We met Vince B, like all the forum people that we were starting to get to know.
Yep.
Vince B, Marty, Julian Lytle, Chris Eliopoulos. We met Sal in person for the first time.
Was Tad Stones at that one, or was he at the next one?
That was the second one, because that was when we were upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Right.
So February. So that means February of 2006 was really sort of like one of our first.
Yeah.
Well, when was episode 100? I don't remember when that was. That was like our first meetup of a lot of these people. So I thought that was cool.
Pants was along that weekend.
Was it?
It was certainly the first time I'd ever met him.
Okay.
That weekend was the first time I had ever met Keith Giffen, J.M. DeMatteis, and Kevin McGuire, and I got him to sign the poster hanging up on my wall here. That was a thrill for me to meet and talk to them each a little bit. That was very cool.
Yeah, and I think I wrote it down here. I was like, I think that's when we met Charlito and Mr. Phil. Okay, so January of 2006 was CGS 100. Okay. So this is when we met other people from the forum, which was kind of cool. March 22nd, 2006, we did the Catwoman commentary.
Oh my God.
Thought that was fun. March 27th, 2006. This is all the episode dates. Bryan and Tasha went to El Salvador and you met the Comic Geekos, Los Comic Geekos. Who did we interview March 7th, 2007? Our 2-year anniversary. Who did we interview?
Mike Norton.
No.
I'm going to say either Stanley or Jeff Johns.
Wasn't Stanley. It was because it was after Stanley. What did you say, Adam?
I was going to say Stanley.
It was sort of because of Stanley we interviewed the next big Marvel writer, Roy Thomas.
Oh, okay.
Oh, boy. All right.
Yeah. March 19th, 2007, we interviewed Simone Bianchi, and that's when we called Sal at the same time to surprise him that Simone was on the phone. Remember that? You remember that?
Yeah.
So March 6th, 2008, we have our first Katie Cook interview. After meeting her, Bryan met her at WonderCon, I think. You were the only one that went there. So there's that. Episode 400.
Thanks to Left Coast Love.
Oh, yep. Episode 400 was March 25th, 2008. That was our very first live call-in show.
Oh, wow.
Right? This is slow roll of technology, right? It wasn't like today where you could just do any, like Zoom.
Yeah.
Call on Zoom. So
Right.
we had to figure these things out. And like the phone would go out every now and then, and then we'd have to wait till the internet came back or whatever it was. Let's see. March 22nd, 2010, episode 808 was actually our 1000th episode. And I texted Pants and I said, "Are we coming up on 2000 at some point?" Like,
yeah.
Shouldn't that be soon? Or did we already pass it? And we were trying to figure out, Adam, if we should include like the Ohatmu stuff you were doing. Like we weren't sure of like.
No, I don't think that should count. I mean, that's that's just a little side project,
right?
It's not geeks talking to geeks. It's just one voice, just reading from a published manuscript.
But I mean, like I think we do count your like Christmas ones and your because those are like for the audience, and you know, so I don't know. Pants is doing. I think he's doing a recount to see where we are in terms of all that. So we can throw all that around to see what we want to include. Let's see, and then March 2001. That was when Pants and I went to C2E2 and Planet Comic-Con in the space of 2 weeks, where I lived with Pants for 2 weeks. That was fun.
I think I was with you guys for like the Chicago leg of that.
Right. Yeah. Funny story about one of the C2E2s. It wasn't that one, but I was doing a show and I was out at C2E2 and I was supposed to leave early to go to the closing of the show, and I decided not to go. I changed my ticket because I wanted to see a girl at the convention the next day. That never really came out. Nothing ever came out of it anyway. And I totally missed the closing of my show. I wasn't in it, obviously, but I was like, "Oh, guys, I can't make it back. You know, oh, it's okay. We'll miss you. Blah blah blah." I don't know which one I should. You know, I sometimes regret not going back, but whatever. These things happen.
That's funny.
So there you go, a little trip down. Oh, and we did get someone sent whoever's running the CGS thing. They sent me this from the Gmail. Jason Keene was listening to our. This might actually be a nice segue to our next thing. He says. After hearing your most recent episode, I couldn't wait to take a picture of the comic rack next to my desk at school. If you look closely, you might see the Doctor Strange story drawn by Mike Mignola you were discussing. I'm not sure if anyone has read it this school year, but I showed off the art to a few of my artistic students, and they are now arguing over which person gets to take it home first.
Nice.
Thanks for the great episode and discussion for my class. So this was about that Doctor Strange, Doctor Doom, Torment and Triumph that we talked about briefly.
Oh, that's cool.
I mentioned, yeah.
Love CGS history trivia.
It's just bonkers that we've been doing this long enough that we actually have history and trivia about ourselves.
Yeah.
That we're now graduating high school kind of age from doing it.
Legit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're old enough to vote.
Now our podcast is eligible for the draft.
Yes.
Yeah. There was some discussion inside the house at some point in the last few weeks when Matt was home for spring break, and I don't even remember how it came up, and somebody said something about, well, you were doing it since before the boys were born. I'm like, no, Matt was just born. He was a baby, and I would leave to go do the show. I'm like, bye, okay, sorry. Gotta go.
Oh, poor Carlene.
Yeah. She certainly brunted the front of that every Sunday and Monday night.
That's right, because we used to record two nights
in a row, 3 episodes each.
Whenever I talk to somebody about it, and they're like, "Oh, you did a podcast?" Like, "Oh yeah, you know." Well, how often would you release? Like once a month or whatever? I'm like, I was like, 5 times a week, and they're just like, they go, I don't understand what you're saying to me. It's like, yeah. I don't know what to tell you.
It was
insanity.
Fun.
I plead insanity. Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. I kind of enjoy the formats we got going right now, but it was fun back then.
Well, we had so much to talk about too, though, right? You know, we were much more engaged in the conversation, and
we lived close.
Well, that's the biggest thing, right?
It's huge.
Yeah. And it was a train that just kept going, and we just had to keep following it because people were expecting, they wanted to hear our thoughts on things, quote unquote.
I mean, all those conversations, we wanted to be able to, be full time and do like any time during the day when news dropped, we would instantly put out an episode an hour later of us talking about the thing that literally just happened. Like that would have been amazing, right? I mean, there was so much content at that time. Like we could have talked more than we did. We could have had interviews, 3 a day, and just kept going. Like it would have been insane.
If my life in particular, probably all of ours would have been 5 or 10 years earlier in our lives, like our early 20s, mid 20s, that would have been so much easier to do.
Well, we didn't need as much. We could have, like the amount of money you need to live when you're 25 versus when you're, kids and stuff is totally different.
Yep.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
So wait, we started so 2000 would have been. I was living in Philly at the time. I was dating my one ex that I broke up with to then come home, and then that's why we started. That's why you called me.
Yeah. You're sitting around with nothing to do. We were like that. That's the part of this that like I think is the disappointing part, right? Is that we had the skills, we had the collective charisma, right? Like and we had the drive at that time to do this. And if we had been able to have a few more sponsors and Peter, you could have been full time, easily. Because at the time, your requirements were very little, right? Like like of all of us, right? And it's just like, man, if we had been able, and if the world was ready for podcasts the way it is now, we easily could have had one full-time salary where Peter and then, the rest of us would have helped out as much as we possibly could in evenings and stuff. But my God, we were so close. We were so close. We just were ahead of it. We were
just a bit outside.
Well, and we were also ahead of so again, like I think I said last episode, or not last, the other episode, we are a couple months older than YouTube, I think, just maybe the same month or a couple weeks, or it's something like that. But YouTube wasn't YouTube. Yeah. It was viral. It was, you paid attention to the viral videos, but did you really, you know what I mean? So all of that social media stuff that is now funneling through Snapchat or Instagram Reels or YouTube Shorts and all the things that are making people influencers today, TikTok obviously didn't exist. So there was, the only way we could spread it, which was literally our tagline, one listener at a time.
Yeah.
It managed to spread, but it didn't go the way it would have probably today. Again, there's so many distractions today, but they weren't there back then. And you also had those people who were like, oh, what's a podcast, right? They're not real quote unquote journalists. Not that we were trying to be, but but we certainly brought attention to a lot of major things in a way that I think was much more engaging than reading about it, right? Like Sal told us how many times that he had more people coming up to him because of his interviews than he ever did from a banner on a website or an article in Wizard, or whatever. Yeah. So, and we heard that from how many different creators over the many years? So,
well, and think about so you say podcasting really isn't journalism, which I find fault with at least these days. Sure. You look at anything on YouTube, and I love watching it. You watch Disney people that walk around and get invited to all kinds of media events to talk about whatever's new coming to Disney, and it's great. I love watching it. It's fabulous. But if that same thing would have happened in the comic world for us back then, or YouTube would have been what it is now, then it would have been, to me, it would have been different.
Yeah. Plus, how many people, would just sort of disregard it just because they're like, oh, they don't know what they're talking about, because we don't have credentials or whatever. Yeah. It's like, I'm sorry. We just have, Simpson animators who are listening to us and one major TV programming guy that goes to a strip club with me, okay, whatever. There's no credentials.
Oh, I remember that.
Whatever.
I forgot about that.
Okay. We have
there was a reason that marketing guys for Marvel and DC started, at the peak of our success, quote unquote, or whatever. They were including us on emails and giving us PDFs and stuff. Like we had FTP access to a Marvel server or whatever. And it was like, we wouldn't have got that if we weren't valuable to them. Right.
Yeah.
So it's like, and that just speaks for itself.
Whose podcast symbol is in one of the Iron Man movies or the Transformers movies? Yeah.
Yeah.
I do have to say,
I
talk about that every now and then. I'm like, hey, you watching that Iron Man movie? Yeah, I said, watch right here.
Not that I've ever seen it. I never
really.
I still haven't seen it. No.
Oh, I've got a good screen cap.
All right, send it to me.
Yeah. I know Tom told us he slipped that in there, but I've never been able to spot it myself.
Oh, okay. I'll send an email. And just to think it's in every copy that will ever be shown ever. Or that was ever made and produced and DVD'd and Blu-rayed. It's there forever.
Civil War, every issue of Civil
comic,
War, right? Thanks to
every
Morty
time there's a new print of a trade, I go in and I look. I'm like, yep, there it is.
They're still there.
Oh my God. Just recently, just a couple months ago, I was at like a new friend's house and I was talking to him and his wife and we were talking about and comics came up or whatever. And I was like, yeah, like my name is like in Civil War. And he goes, what? And he goes over to his shelf and he has the trade paperback of Civil War. And he's like, he hands it to me and I flip to the page. I'm like, right there. He goes, oh my God.
Even like this is probably, it's a number of years ago. It's when Tom King was writing the Batman book. Tom used to throw in names of tons of people.
Oh yeah.
You know, CGS people,
I'd love
wherever.
his it was either suspects or
Joker's victims, I think.
Victims, yeah. Oh my gosh, that was so much fun.
He wrote one where he said, I don't know if it's my full name, but it might just say Rios, and he says some football player, because that was the big joke. It was like a lot of football players would have names, and he said something like Rios breaks a leg. I was like, that's perfect. It's like my theater thing mixed with you know. So
yeah,
so fun.
He's still doing that, you know. Just to he did a miniseries this past year called Batman Killing Time.
Yep.
And a bunch of podcaster friends of his ended up dying by proxy in like the 4th or 5th issue.
I don't know what that says about.
I guess it's easier than trying to come up with random names.
Right.
Know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
And nobody who doesn't know has no idea. So
yeah. And it's so much fun for anybody. I mean, it was fun for us when it was happening. It's fun to read and recognize other names and find out who they are. I don't know. It's just fun.
Yeah.
It puts so much positiveness out there and so much fun. And why not? Good heavens.
So before it gets too late, do we want to?
we should actually talk about the comics we read.
Talk about So we read Gotham by Gaslight, Bryan Augustyn, Mike Mignola, the unofficial first Elseworlds for DC.
Yep.
Did I include the little forward in that PDF that I sent?
Oh, signed Jack the Ripper?
Oh no, there's a maybe I read it in the version that I read. So Bryan Augustyn talked about the origin of this story and how
I didn't have that.
So Mark Waid was editing Secret Origins at the time in the 80s. One of my favorite. I'm sure, Adam, you really dig that too.
Oh, definitely.
And they wanted to, DC said, you need to do an annual. So then they were like, an annual? Oh God, what do we do? You know, we have our issues charted out. What do we do? So I think it was Mark Waid's idea where they said, okay, let's do this. Instead of doing an origin story, let's do a new type of origin story, setting the character into some other place. Like, and I think he even mentioned that Mark Waid said, you know, what if Superman landed in Russia? Which, if you know Red Sun, that's the premise for Red Sun.
Yep.
So then it was Bryan Augustyn's idea he thought about it and he wrote up a 2-pager detailing what if Batman fought Jack the Ripper. So it was supposed to be an annual in Secret Origins. They took it to Dick Giordano and he was like, this is a graphic novel. And that's how this came about. So
that's cool.
It's kind of cool.
I bought it off the rack.
Yeah. I'm trying to, it's a long time ago and I don't remember. I just remember being captivated by it, right? I was like 15 years old and it's just like, or maybe 14, depending on when it came out. Yeah, I was still 14, right? Because I hadn't had my birthday yet. So like, this is amazing when you're 14 years. I mean, come on, this is so cool. And it was that perfect bound, a flat binding on the side. It was like so cool, and then you look at the artwork and you're like, "What? Oh my god!" Like everything about it, it was just such a cool package, like the whole thing.
Right.
So you had to buy it. Like there was no way you were visiting the comic store that week and not choosing to purchase this. I can't imagine.
I think it did pass me, but it might have been because it came out in 88? Is that when it?
89.
89, yeah. So I wasn't collecting.
Early 89.
Wasn't collecting at that time. I think I picked up like a second print on in a back issue bin. P. Craig Russell on inks, David Horning on colors, John Workman on letters. I mean, those are made P. Craig Russell, Mike Mignola, John Workman. I mean, these are big names. And it still holds up, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Sure does.
So, that letter, the person that wrote in talked about the Doctor Doom and Doctor Strange issue, which also was Mike Mignola. And, when you put both of them side by side and they both were worked on relatively close, like I feel like the Doom one allowed for Mignola to go a little bit wilder, obviously, because it's magic and hell and, faraway places. And this one might be a little more
restrained, subdued.
Yeah. But if I had to put any kind of artistic eye on it, everything just feels right. Every choice feels right. Every camera angle feels right for the story, for the time period of the late 1800s, the mood of it, the coloring of it, the shading of it, the line work, the heavy dark spaces. Like it's so effing good artistically wise. It blows my mind.
Well, it's one that feels pretty timeless. Like if this came out right now, I don't think we would look at it and say this looks like an old comic.
No.
Yeah.
With the possible exception of like you could have richer colors now because colors were a lot more flat back then because they didn't have digital yet. Like maybe someone could say like, why is the sky just like an even blue, or whatever, right? But that's nothing. Everything else, like you said, it's just gorgeous.
And then the story is certainly simple enough, right? It feels like it's pulling from things we already know, like Batman Year One. And again, purposely, right? Because they are purposely trying to put Batman in a different time period. And at least in... and that was kind of the premise for a lot of the Elseworlds for a while, like put their origin story, make a change to their origin story, right?
Yeah.
It surprisingly still works. Like Adam, I wanted to ask you about there are so many actual real life contemporaries during this time. The one we know are Freud and there's a Sherlock mention, but I have to wonder.
It's my London detective friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Are there more in the news clippings, like some of the names, like some of the princes and all? I don't recognize a lot of their names. I didn't know if those were real or not.
Yeah, I can't add anything to that, Peter. I didn't recognize too many other names either. Those were the two big ones. Freud, the unnamed but still pretty clearly implied Sherlock Holmes.
Right. And then, of course, Jack the Ripper, too. Like, it just feels like it works. They managed to make it work for the story and not feel gimmicky just yet, because there are certainly other Elseworlds that are completely gimmicky, especially in later years.
Yeah. But even the way this opened with Batman's origin is very classic, yet still set in this time period,
right?
And still works perfectly.
Well, and it was the fitting in part, Peter, is like, the whole and the real Jack the Ripper story, right? He just disappeared, right? And so there's lots of conjecture that like he left, because like a serial killer doesn't really just stop killing. So like either he died or he left, and maybe he killed differently in other places, or maybe he did stop. Nobody knows, right? But like, so it's not a weird idea that he got on a boat and came to the United States and was and then picked up his knife over here and nobody realized because we were a hot mess in 1889 or whatever.
Yeah.
He even makes mention of it, speaking of classics that I've barely scratched the surface of. I've never really finished From Hell by Alan Moore, right?
Wow, okay.
Which was first published in the same year, interestingly enough.
Oh, there you go. And Mr. Phil always yells at me about that. But even in this, where the killer is like, oh, I did all those killings. I even did those ones in Paris that no one really connected me to. I was like, ooh, is that actually part of the mythos of Jack the Ripper? Wow, that's fascinating.
I don't know. I don't remember that, but again, there's so much conjecture is one of the craziest things.
That has to be one of the biggest mysteries in the world yet, for all the conjecture that still holds up today.
I know. I was thinking about it when I was reading this. I was like, man, I wonder, is anybody going to clean out their attic and find a journal? There was a scam, I don't know, 20 years ago or something where somebody, wrote and they're like, oh, I found a journal, it was all fake, right? Because they did ink tests on it or whatever, and it wasn't old enough, right? Yeah. But there's always the possibility that somebody at some point will unearth some proof, and then we'll know. But odds are against it. But man, wouldn't it be interesting to know?
Yeah, it would be fascinating.
I think Alan Moore is right. I mean, I do know the story of it at least. I'm like, you sure? That perfectly makes sense. Of course, it's that way. The other thing I really liked about this too is so the other connection, the use of the newspapers, because that would be the thing back then. That's the only slow roll of information. The sort of hint that Bruce is kind of still like his Playboy self, but it's not so prominent because so is everybody else. I feel like the Inspector Gordon's boss, whatever that guy, the commissioner, I guess it is, he also comes across as someone that's too rich, too powerful to even care, and just wants to solve the case so that he can go on and schmooze and womanize and all that. If you've never read this story, this is, I mean, I can't see how it's not, and I'm sure they might have said it in some behind the scenes, but the Batman by Matt Reeves, I mean, the costuming is the same. It's got the collar thing, the nose, the way the nose is on the cowl, it feels like it's Robert Pattinson's. Some of this is in Robert Pattinson's design.
Yeah, the goggles aren't quite the same though.
No, that's for sure.
There's no eyepieces in Pattinson's cowl.
Yeah.
There's
even a little hint of a Batcave. On page 25, it's like, my uniform equipment have been moved to a safe place, quite safe, and there's just the picture of the clock yet.
Yeah.
And the commissioner's leaning right up against it.
Yeah.
Just, Mignola's so damn good. He's just so good.
Yeah, and with Russell's inks, Adam, talk about a perfect marriage of penciling and inking styles. Russell reins Mignola in beautifully. And this isn't the same. Mignola's artwork in later years gets a little bit out of control, impressionistic, it's all angularity and big fields of black every place, but it's really tightened and compressed by Russell's inks here. It's some of the best artwork I've seen.
Because P. Craig Russell's the exact opposite of Mignola. It's perfection, tiny detail, and all the stuff. And Mignola's these big strokes of like you said, wonky angles and stuff. So it's really an interesting meet in the middle, and it's perfect. I wonder if Mignola liked it or if he was irritated. I don't know. Something I'd like to know. I can't imagine someone being irritated at P. Craig Russell, for any artistic reasons. I don't know him personally. Maybe he's a douchebag. I don't know. But, artistically, it's how could one artist look at his work and say, I don't like it? It just seems impossible, right?
And he's still pre-Hellboy Mike Mignola, right? So it's he maybe doesn't have as much power over certain things, and I wonder if they worked before. I'll have to check to see who was his inker on like Phantom Stranger and Cosmic Odyssey and
Was Cosmic Odyssey wasn't before this, was it?
I'm just gonna look that up.
I thought that was like 1990.
88.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
wow.
really?
Yeah, so he was working on. So you got Phantom Stranger, which was in 1987, also by inks by P. Craig Russell. I thought so. Okay, so they're a team, at least in regards to that. Let's see. Carlos Garzon is his inker on Cosmic Odyssey. I mean, I guess you could probably say with these graphic novels, because both the Doom one came out in June of 1989, and this one came out in November of 1989. There's no way he did one and then started, like he was probably working on them both together, I would think. And in fact, I think the Doom one, Dr. Doom and Strange one, he probably finished it early because there was some sort of, not a delay, but it took a while for them to release it. So he probably was already finished with that one and started working on this one. And then he goes on to like Fafford and the Grey Mouser. I'm trying to see. And then Hellboy Seed of Destruction isn't until 94. Although he showed up in Next Men as a character before that. So that's a long time. That's a long time to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Adam, what are your thoughts on this?
Okay, well, this is my first read of this story.
Oh, nice.
Oh, wow. Okay.
I can't comment on how well it holds up for that reason, but it's something I've always wanted to read. I know I do have a copy of it. I'm hoping it's a first printing as opposed to a reprint somewhere in my to-be-read pile. I bought it at a discount bin someplace. But I read what you sent my way, Peter, and yeah, I agree with much of what's been said here. Artistically, it is fantastic, and it's the period feel is absolutely impeccable. You mentioned what was done with the scraps of newspaper as a storytelling technique. That worked well for me. I'm a big fan of the period signage in the backgrounds of a lot of the panels. Really some research went into that. My favorite was "Children Cry for Helfer's Gastoria." Inquire of editor druggist. That's Helfer being Andy Helfer, who was also an editor on Secret Origins, with whom Mignola probably worked at some point. So yeah, it looks great. It invokes that wonderful sort of dark, gritty, industrial revolution, Victorian feel for Gotham of that time. And I agree also that the story was fairly simple. Really, there aren't a lot of twists and turns to this one. I think Augustyn's period dialogue was perfectly believable, and it was cool that he threw in cameos by people like Freud and kind of an unofficial like Teddy Roosevelt cameo, except he was Inspector Gordon.
Yeah.
And yeah, it looks great, and as far as the mystery of the Ripper, pretty much as soon as creepy Uncle Jake appears on panel, it's pretty clear he's going to be the Ripper, or for a while there, because John Workman's journal entry lettering style for both Batman and the Ripper was in kind of the same handwriting. For a bit there, I thought maybe it was going to turn out that Bruce Wayne actually was the Ripper. It's just he was experiencing dissociative identity disorder, but nope. Instead, they went the more clear-cut way, and the Ripper was, in fact, the creepy, sexist lawyer that Bruce meets on the steamship back home. So, yeah, it's art-wise, it was everything I could have hoped it would be. Story-wise, I was actually hoping it would be a little bit more. So it's nice to know that there is a second Victorian Batman story out there, which maybe I'll track that down in a cheap bin sometime, too. The Master of the Future follow-up.
And that one's by artwork by Eduardo Barreto.
Who is one of my favorite artists of the Bronze Age. He drew me Superman back in the day.
Cool. There's actually another Elseworlds featuring Jack the Ripper, Wonder Woman Amazonia, from 1997, where Wonder Woman is in the Victorian era and she battles Jack the Ripper. And I don't know if it has any connection to this because I've never read it. I probably think it doesn't, but who knows? Maybe it does.
That feels like a little bit of a stretch. I think the Batman just somehow feels right that he should be going up against the Ripper, right? Like it doesn't feel like a stretch at all. And you say it, it's like, yeah, that makes sense.
Sure. They're both urban creatures of the night.
Yeah.
The one place. Go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
Okay. The one story element that made me think, okay, there's where it becomes, it's going to sound weird to say, but there's where it becomes an Elseworlds thing, right? Like, because you're already in the premise, and like I mentioned, later Elseworlds stories, sometimes they always were like, they always had to be tragic. They always had to have tragic endings. They either skewed dark or it just felt maybe like the setting didn't feel as earned as this does. So I'm reading, and it's like, yeah, it feels like it could exist. It feels like it could exist. And then you get the reason why Jack the Ripper does what he does, and it's because Martha Wayne scorned him before she got married. And it's like, I get it. Like, you have to do it because you're throwing it back into the Batman world. Mm-hmm. But that was the one thing that I was like, oh, even after all these years, it felt like a little too on the nose. Like, it's like, oh, it's Martha's fault that he's Jack. Like, it's like, I wish it didn't have to have a reason, and it still could have been his uncle, but it just didn't have to have a reason. So,
and she followed me to London and was still laughing at me. I'm like,
Yeah,
I see what you're saying.
Yeah, that was the only thing. It's a small little thing. Reading it this time, that I was like, oh, there's the hook, the thing that makes this, like I mentioned, an Elseworlds that has to have some kind of tragic aspect to it.
Yeah. So the line, like that thing, Shane, about like she was laughing at me. When I first read it, I was like, that doesn't seem like Martha Wayne at all. I don't believe that she would have actually done that. But then I went, oh, well, she probably didn't.
Right.
He's telling the story, and he probably asked her out, and she said, no, I'm sorry. I'm not really interested. And then he went, that bitch, oh, she's laughing at me, because now he's twisted in his mind, and he's twisted it so much that now he's a crazy serial killer, like the most famous serial killer in all of human history. Now that's him, right? Like, okay, now it makes perfect sense, right? Like that. Yeah. So, yeah.
Because you're right. It's all him saying it from his point of view. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Right. There's nobody there to corroborate that. Right.
Right.
What I was going to say is, like, so the first time that I went to England, I went to visit my cousin when she was studying there for a semester, and I just went over for a weekend, and then we went on this Jack the Ripper walk, which was like, we thought it was going to be like this silly touristy thing, but we're like, what the hell? We have nothing else to do tonight, and so we did it, and it was actually very cool. It was at night, and we walked around, and the guy who gave the tour was this old guy who had been studying Jack the Ripper like his entire life. He wrote a book about it, the whole thing, right? So it was actually very fascinating and scary and like chilling, and like, oh my God, like this is a spot where one of the bodies was found. Like, oh, it's like, it was pretty freaky, right? Because they never caught the guy, so it's freaky. Well, then when we went to London and with Jamie, we went on the walk again, because that same old guy was still doing the walk. And now, I mean, that was, I don't know, 10 years later or whatever. So, and it was still like a cool thing to do. And Jamie really enjoyed it. And it was like, it was pretty neat then, because like, I think actually David Peterson and Julia came with us and did it as well, if I remember correctly, because they were there for that first London Con. Yeah, whichever way. They were there, I think. Anyway, it was fun. And that's made me think of that, because it's a Jamie memory.
Yeah. I remember him telling that story about how much fun he had doing that. It was really cool.
Yep. That guy was frighteningly knowledgeable.
Yeah, it's funny. It's one of those things where it's like, it's obviously a tourist thing, but it was also fascinating and creepy and worth it, right? Because you pay the guy like $8 or whatever, I don't know, $10 or whatever to do the walk, and it's like, okay, it's not going to break the bank, and then you learn a little history, and it was cool. I don't know if that guy's still doing it because he'd be very old right now. Donald Rumbelow. I still remember his name.
Yeah.
The world's foremost ripperologist was like his like. I don't know how anyone could be foremost. Like I don't know.
Yeah. Like, what's the accrediting body for ripperology?
Yes, exactly.
This is on the DC app. If anybody hasn't read it, it's well worth.
Yeah, that's where I read it.
Yep, get yourself a good iPad and enjoy it.
And at least I'm pretty sure it's in the Ultra tier. Was the Master of the Future was right with it too, bundled.
Mm-hmm. Well,
I read that before. I just don't remember that.
Yeah, I know I have that. I read that too. I just don't remember it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, here's a visitor.
What? Crazy.
How you doing, Ben?
How you doing?
All right.
Is he on spring break?
No, today was his first day back at classes, but he's home for this semester. Commuting back and forth. I mean, it's only 35 minutes away.
Right.
And his classes are Monday, Wednesday, Friday. So rather than waste all that time there when sitting around, he came home to live this semester here.
What does he think of his old man still yapping with his friends about comics?
What do you think of me still yapping comics with everybody?
Oh, it's fun. I don't mind it as much now because now
Doesn't mind it as much.
Yeah, and he's been on some of the movie reviews that we do on the other feed. So yeah. And what do you've been reading the newest Amazing Spider-Man by what's it, Zeb Wells? So he's all into that, the first 3 volumes.
Very cool.
Yeah. He just got done his class, and they were watching an episode of Star Trek, The Measure of a Man, where Data's on trial for his humanity. And then they watched an episode of Westworld after that, and he thought that was pretty cool. And I'm like, it is. You can watch all of that. It's awesome.
Yeah. So I have a list of other Elseworlds if people want to reminisce a little bit here.
Sure.
So the first official Elseworlds was Batman Holy Terror, and that was the next one. That came out in 1991.
That had 3 parts to it, didn't it?
Batman Holy Terror?
Or no, that was Batman Dracula. I'm thinking of Red Rain.
Yeah, that whole Kelly Jones thing.
Yep.
That one, Holy Terror, was by Alan Brennert and Norm Brayfogle. Also had an appearance of like Barry Allen was in that. And most of the first ones were all Batman centric. So it was like Batman Holy Terror, Batman and Dracula Red Rain. That was November of 91. Doug Munch and Kelly Jones. Batman Master of Future, December of 91. Robin 3000 in November 92. By Byron Price and Steve Ringenberg with art by P. Craig Russell.
I remember liking that one a lot.
I've never read that one. I really should. November 92, Batman, the Blue, the Gray, and the Bat.
Yep.
By Elliot S. Magan, Alan Weiss, and Jose Luis Garcia Lopez. I definitely read that one.
Yeah, I had that one too.
Yeah.
Yep.
Batman during the Civil War, right? I guess that's what that
Sure.
thing is, yeah. And then I'm just going to skip around. These aren't all of them, but like Superman Speeding Bullets, which puts Kal-El being found by the Waynes instead of the Kents. Probably one of my favorite ones, if not the favorite one, The Golden Age by James Robinson and Paul Smith.
And Elseworlds that kind of bled into continuity a little bit.
Yep,
Sure did.
Loved that. Love.
Yeah, that's so good.
In 94, in fact, Paul Smith on his Twitter, he posts pages every now and then of that series, which is really great.
That's cool.
1994, DC did a whole bunch of Elseworlds annuals. That was their theme for that year.
Yep.
Batman in Darkest Night, which is...
That's a favorite of mine.
Batman as a Green Lantern.
Green Lantern, yeah.
Right. 1996 gave us Kingdom Come, probably the most well-known Elseworlds out there.
I didn't even realize that was Elseworlds.
Yeah.
Is that under the Elseworlds banner? Really?
Yeah, has the little Elseworlds circle. Batman Captain America by John Byrne, surprisingly, was also...
It's a good one. It's the 40s Batman. So, square-jawed, eyebrows on cowl,
Mentioned Wonder Woman Amazonia. That was in 1997. As I said, I'm skipping around. And then just two more. There's plenty more. So many Batman one.
Yeah.
And Superman. 1998 gave us Superman Batman Generations by John Byrne.
Love that.
Hmm?
That was an awesome read.
On 2 sequels.
Yep.
Yeah.
And again, one of my personal favorites that I just artwork wise, and it's smack in the 80s. JLA The Nail by Alan Davis and Mark Farmer.
Oh yes.
I had that
That's a good
too.
one.
Yeah, and that one had a sequel as well. Another nail.
Another nail. Yep, you're right.
And then, like I said, plenty more. Justice League ones, Superman ones, Commandy, Wonder Woman, et cetera, et cetera. So,
Hey, so here's a question for you guys. So we said that, it's a no-brainer that Batman would fight Jack the Ripper because it just makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
What Marvel character would fight Jack the Ripper if you were going to tell that story?
Daredevil comes immediately to mind.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Daredevil would be my first pick.
would you think Wolverine just because he's so long lived? Like,
I think that's a good possibility. Yeah.
You know what looks good in
That's an
sideburns?
Yeah.
It's an interesting idea, right? Because he could have just been alive
there.
then and just tell. It wasn't even.
Right.
It's not even Elseworlds. It's just he just did it.
When was his origin? Like, when did Origin take place? Is it before the I forget how it,
I
like
don't forget-
would he
yeah, I
be,
forget
would he
the
been
year.
a teenager, and like because he has claws, does he get accused? And like there's so many parallels. I'm sure someone made
He
it.
could just kill him, and that's why he never kills again.
There you
Because
go.
Yeah.
Logan just killed him and dumped him in the river and didn't
Right.
make a big deal out of it.
Because
Like,
Jack the Ripper probably killed a redheaded woman, and that was
Yep.
someone that he was dating because all he dates is redheads, it seems like. And
Yeah.
interesting.
And then forgot through the Weapon X program.
Right. He's probably like,
Yeah.
oh yeah, I did do that, didn't I?
Yeah.
somebody draw that. I want to see it.
There's your idea.
Could you see like a Doctor Strange story, like or a magician, and like maybe wrap it up into something like that,
I
arcane?
kind of think that story exists, kind of think of it.
Oh, okay.
I think that Jack the Ripper has been a presence in the Marvel universe, and I think he's explained as being some kind of demonic succubus thing that has possessed multiple hosts over the years. And I think Doctor Strange actually did go up against this
There you go.
this version of the Ripper, probably during Roy Thomas's run, because those are the terms in which Thomas thinks.
Yeah, so definitely thumbs up if you've never read it. It's stellar stuff.
Yeah, gets easily at least 4.5 frickin' sweeters from me.
Cool.
What are we reading next? Do
Well,
have
we'll
an
have to-
assignment? Just the comics that you were telling us about.
I kind of like this tour through like sort of like the evergreen of the companies. Like even if we've read them before, I've never read them. These major one issue stories or quick plots, or quick reads. Because currently there's nothing. I mean, there's stuff that's I think fun to read or maybe worthwhile, but I don't think there's anything sort of pressing right now. Both companies seem to be in a little bit of a lull. Marvel just announced they're going to have a new Hulk series in June by Philip Kennedy Johnson, I think his name.
Oh, yeah, who wrote Superman for a year or so.
And it's like because they had a really good Incredible Hulk run with Al Ewing, 50 issues, and then they started a new series, and that one just didn't. That's not lighting the world on fire.
It's a tough act to follow.
Yeah. And then this one is, the premise is sort of like Hulk fighting the monsters of Marvel or something like that is the premise. So it seems like it could be sort of interesting, but if you're a Hulk fan, but again, good things, but just nothing that I feel like I'm having more fun reading like some of this older stuff. So
It's okay by me.
From Hell. We'll just read all From Hell.
Oh my God.
2
That's
weeks.
a lengthy read. That is a
Yeah,
lengthy read.
I've never. When you said it, Peter, I've never read it either.
I keep stalling. I think it's chapter 4. It's the carriage ride through London where the one guy is talking to the inspector about a lot of the statues, a lot of the architecture of London, and how it has to do with like ley lines and arcane things, and it's so important to the story. But every time I go through it, I just stall out because it's so much sort of information, and it's like, oh my god! And Phil always yells at me because he's like, "That's one of the best chapters." Like, I know. It's just, some things I just, for some reason now I don't even have it anymore. So. Adam, is there anything that you would want, any like reader? Are you reading at all? Or are you just too busy with your show?
I do have on my nightstand right now. I just finished reading the first trade of, or rereading really, after our recent Vertigo discussion. I read the rest of that first trade of Sandman Mystery Theater.
Oh.
And, DC's putting out these omnibus editions now. I think it's going to be like the whole series in 2 volumes.
Yeah.
I've got the first one of those is coming through DCBS as soon as it's ready. And also, Usagi Yojimbo.
Oh, nice.
The colorized first volume, which came out through, I think it was IDW not too long ago. So I'm finally going to read some of, there we go, some of that anthropomorphic samurai goodness.
Running a long time now.
Yeah.
That started, that's probably a 40-year-old comic now. I don't know when the very first, because it was in, before he had his own book, he was in, what the hell was the name of it now? Some like small indie publisher in the 80s, and it was probably 84-ish, maybe 80. Yeah. Oh, what the hell was the name? Oh, it's going to drive me.
Albedo
yes.
Anthropomorphics.
Yep. And what year was that?
1984.
Wow.
Wow.
So we're just
creeping up
coming
on 40.
40 years. Crazy. Yeah, the very first Usagi run, like the first 10 issues or so, it's so cool. Get introduced to the characters. There's lots of like samurai politics and stuff in it. Not like boring, it's always filled with lots of sword fighting, but it's like it really sets the stage. It's cool stuff. You know what else I'd like to read, just because I haven't, so when we were doing the podcast, I was rereading like all of X-Men from Giant Size up, right? And I was just working my way. And like I had finally gotten to like the Silvestri stuff, and was like, I don't even know if I quite made it to Jim Lee yet. And that's the stuff that like I really was excited to get to. And then, we got busy with us and I just never kept reading. So I'm like so close, like the first Gambit appearance, and like when like the
266
stuff, the Jubilee and all that's like, and I'm like, could we just like read the first Gambit appearance, or like the first Jubilee appearance, or what, just like something, a couple, like 1 or 2 issues. They don't even have to be consecutive, just like I don't know, whatever. Just
we should read,
it would be fun.
We should read the first Gambit, the first Jubilee, and like when Psylocke becomes Psylocke in a story that they could never do today. They would never want it. In fact, they reverted her, how many years ago back to her original body. Yeah, we should take a look at those and see who has them, and
I think they're on the Marvel app.
You would think.
I think all of like Uncanny is on the Marvel app.
The that Gambit issue, I traveled up to Bloomsburg. I mean, that's where Matt's going to school now, and that's where Carlene went. None of that had anything to do with this. I was searching in the phone book for comic stores trying to find a copy of Gambit first appearance in Uncanny 266, and I was calling all over creation and finally got a hold of one up at Bloomsburg, and I said, I'll be up this afternoon, and I drove up there to get it. And of course the shop's not there anymore, but yeah, I drove up. I forget who rode with me, but one of my high school friends rode up with me all the way to Bloomsburg to pick up one book.
I just got my copy of Uncanny 266 out of the bins at Pagoda Comics. They just had it there.
Oh, wow.
I didn't have to look around or anything. It was like $8 or $12, which was, a lot-ish for, like a 14-year-old back in the 90s. But
sure.
There, and glad I have it.
I want to say, God, I don't know when 266 came out, what year. It had to be
90 maybe.
It had to be like 91 or 92, maybe 93 when I drove up there to get it.
Yeah, couldn't be earlier. I mean, it couldn't be later than 92 because I know Gambit existed at that point.
266, you said?
Yeah.
Almost there.
June of 1990.
Yeah, it was probably 91 or 92 when I drove up there.
Enter the mutant called Gambit.
Yep.
You know what else would be fun to read? Like the first 4 titles. Was it 4 titles? Of like just the first issues, kind of like what we did with
Vertigo.
Vertigo, to read whatever the first 4 main ones of like Marvel 2099.
Spider-Man, Ravage,
Spider-Man, Ravage, Doom,
and Punisher.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That would be fun to read at somewhere down the road.
Yeah.
Just
all of them oil stamped.
Yeah.
Spider-Man was so good.
Just to see, right? Like just to see, which ones. Like you could do that.
Spider-Man and Doom
many.
are still going to be awesome.
Spoiler: Ravage isn't.
That's still just as bad.
Because think about it, we could do like the first issues. This would probably take more than one episode, but the first issues of all the new universe titles.
Oh man!
Right?
God.
That would go going back. But then we could do like the first issues of like Marvel Knights, which we already did the Daredevil one. Like just going through, like you could, every time there was like an imprint or a new thing, we just
just the original Image slate too.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Or like
not like the first. I just mean like that first wave, like the
first 7,
Spawn,
Youngblood and Spawn, and,
right.
and
one from each creator,
and Valentino Shadowhawk thing and whatever. Right? Yeah.
Was What Works the
Savage.
7th one that was so delayed?
Yeah, that was the Portasio one. Yeah.
The Pit.
I'll tell you what, though. No, that wasn't one of the originals.
Was it later?
Yeah, that was. I mean, well, it might have
Dragon original.
Savage Dragon. If we just talk about like the 7.
Yeah, the 7 original ones.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, though, some of those I still have up here in the noggin. Like I can still remember scenes from Cyberforce and Youngblood and Wildcat, like because that
Wildcat,
was such a. They just meant something. No matter how it turned out, those issues meant something. And maybe I only read 1 issue of Shadowhawk, but it's still. I was like, I still remember you having to flip the book,
I just remember being like, who the hell is this Jim Valentino guy? Like all the other guys you knew, they were super famous. And then there was like, and Shadowhawk. And you're like, by who? Never heard of that guy. I still don't know what he did before Image. What did he do?
That's good. He was on Guardians of the Galaxy, and that was like really popular for them.
Normally.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know. I missed that completely.
Yeah, so did I.
I loved Wildcats.
How's working at the comic store going for?
It's good. Yeah, she's having fun. Like she does a lot of like organizing the miniatures and like restocking and taking inventory and changing prices and stuff, like
Nice.
and like she'll file away back issues or whatever. And, and it's so funny because she's already like, why can't people put stuff back where they found it? Like, yeah.
Yeah,
It's always something to put back where it belongs because people love to just put shit everywhere.
Oh,
Yeah.
they sure do.
Yeah. But she likes it because she's super into all like the D&D stuff. So like dealing with miniatures is like awesome because then
That's
she
cool.
like, knows every single miniature that they make now, or whatever. She loves it.
That's awesome.
Nice. All right, fun. Enjoy your trip to Belgium.
Yeah.
Oh,
have
thanks.
fun.
Yeah, we'll be in Belgium and the Netherlands, so see lots of cool old buildings.
Well, oh, Shane, you didn't talk about Shazam.
Oh, no.
Yeah.
Well, I loved it. Go see it. It's fun.
All right, there you go.
Talk about another time when more people seen it, if anybody.
Sounds good. All right.
See you.
See ya.
See you.
Bye.